DMX is one of the most influential rappers to ever walk the earth.
Still going through it, pain and the hurt, soaking up trouble like rain in the dirt.
His voice is something people felt worldwide, making him one of the most beloved rappers in history. People deeply resonated with him, whether it was through his music, acting, or him just being him. Despite this success, X's life was marred by neglect, abuse, addiction, prison, and so much trauma. His life was excruciatingly painful from the moment he was born. Because of the contrast between crazy pain and crazy success, today we're doing a deep dive on the heartbreaking life of DMX. What made X's life so painful and traumatic from birth? How did X beat the odds and find success? And how did it all crash down at the end? My name's Pancho, the host of Rap Lore, and we're gonna dive into it right now.
Who was doing the beating?
My mother, and would wait till I go to sleep. And she'd climb on my back, and just, used to beat me till she was tired.
Like we always do, we're gonna take this from the very start. Earl Simmons was born on December 18th of 1970 in money-earning Mount Vernon, New York. He was the middle child of the family, and his parents were very young. His mom was 19 and dad was 18 when he was born. When X was a baby, his dad skipped town to Philly to pursue his dream of being an artist, leaving him and his mother behind in Mount Vernon. And his mom was not the best of moms. She regularly beat, abused, and neglected Earl as a kid, and allowed the men she was seeing at the time to do the same. She would beat him with brooms, belts, extension cords, and whatever else was in arm's length. X claimed she would wait until he went to sleep, then go into his room and, quote, beat him until she was tired. One time, she was so angry that she grabbed a broomstick and beat him so hard that 2 of his teeth got knocked out. And the worst part was, if he spoke up about the abuse going on, she would constantly threaten that, quote, the white people were gonna take him away. While all this was going on, X suffered from horrible bronchial asthma that frequently had him in the hospital, unable to breathe. Mixing the random beatings with the random inability to breathe is a very, very harsh childhood. Despite X not speaking up about his mom's abuse, she went ahead and gave him away anyway. At age 7, she sent him to an institution in Yonkers for the first time, and by 10, she put him in a group home for 18 months after getting expelled from school. When he became a teenager, X's mom decided she was done with being a parent and kicked X out of their home for good. And with no other options, X hit the streets of Yonkers and started sleeping on top of rooftops. And side note, I'm from New York, I'm from Westchester County, and for y'all that don't know, New York winters are and beyond brutal. They are so cold that the state has laws like Cold Blue and Right to Shelter specifically to get people off of the freezing streets. I cannot imagine being up on a wild rooftop in the dead of winter, especially as a 14-year-old kid. Unfortunately, these are the cards X was dealt, but he was able to make it through, mostly due to a chance encounter with dogs. While he was homeless, he constantly worried about what could happen to him, especially while he was asleep. It'd be very easy to get robbed, jumped, or worse while living up on those rooftops. Because of this, he befriended stray dogs in the city, and they became his lookouts while he slept at night. And the crazy part is, sometimes they weren't even strays. He desired the love and protection from dogs so much that sometimes he would go out and steal them from other people. He spoke about this at length during his podcast with Drink Champs. These experiences is where his obsession with dogs came from, that he would use in almost all of his music throughout the years. This period is also what kicked off his robbing career, not by choice, but from pure desperation. He had no food, was hungry, and decided that he was gonna eat. It was as simple as that. He would rap about this in future songs like Get At Me Dawg.
Rob and I steal, not 'cause I want to, 'cause I have to. And don't make me show you with the Mac.
But I'm jumping the gun a little bit. We'll take it back to the teen years. This homeless period was the time that X really started to get into music. He first popped out on the scene as a beatboxer, performing alongside Yonkers-based artist Reddy Ron. Earl took on the name DMX, inspired by the iconic Oberheim DMX drum machine. He then added his own meaning behind the name, claiming it was short for Darkman X. This was back in 1984. After about a year of beatboxing for Ron, he encouraged X to take the mic and start rapping for himself. Now, given everything that's happened, this sounds like the most positive thing in his life, but even this story is filled with pain because of what Ron did to X. According to X, one day they were hanging out and Ron passed him a joint that he believed was just weed. X had been smoking weed since age 8, which is also crazy and traumatic, but anyway, he thought it was just weed and took a puff from it. But much to X's surprise, the joint was laced with crack that Ron had put into it without telling X. This one night kicked off X's lifelong battle with addiction that derailed his life more times than anybody could count. X would later refer to that moment as the moment a monster was born inside of him.
Why would you do that to a child?
And this is just another example of an adult that failed X. As a kid, every adult in his life failed him. Dad left, mom was abusive, mom's boyfriends were abusive, and other adults gave him crack. That's why it's not a surprise why he said things like he loves dogs more than humans. Humans have been the source of all of his pain in life.
A dog doesn't know how to lie to you.
Anyway, despite all the trauma, X dove headfirst into music and relentlessly pursued his rap dreams. He hustled in the Yonkers and New York City underground scenes for years, doing shows, battling, and just rapping on the street. By 1991, he built up enough buzz that Source magazine featured him in their unsigned hype section. This caught the attention of Columbia Rough House Records, who signed him later that year. He dropped his debut album Born Loser with Rough House, but it pretty much flopped. The label didn't push it at all, mainly because they were focused on their already successful acts like Criss Cross and Cypress Hill. X was just not a priority. The single didn't chart anywhere, causing the label to lose faith in X and drop him in '93. He then had to go back to the streets, hustling and grinding like crazy. He stayed indie until '97 when he got a second chance through his longtime friend Irv Gotti. Irv had just gotten a job as head A&R at Def Jam Records and fought tooth and nail to get X on the roster. Irv believed in X so much that he threatened to quit his job if they didn't sign him. The label laughed at him after hearing that, so he actually did it. He quit, forcing the label to scramble, rehire him, and bring X on board. If my friendships aren't that real, I don't even want them. Y'all could have them. That's crazy. That's super crazy. With Def Jam backing up X, everything was in place for him to really take off. The label put out Get At Me Dog in February of '98 and followed it up with his massive album, It's Dark and Hell Is Hot. This project shattered expectations. It debuted at #1 on Billboard, sold 251,000 copies first week, and launched DMX to the stratosphere. X's music was magnetic. His voice was so strong and powerful and held so much passion inside of it. It was something that as soon as people heard, they couldn't not pay attention to it. On top of that, what he was rapping about struck a chord with fans, especially ones that went through similar struggles as him. He became the mouthpiece for people going through poverty, addiction, and neglect. And this reputation was solidified further when he dropped his most heartfelt song, Slippin', later that year.
Yo, I'm slipping, I'm falling. I got to get up. Get back on my feet so I can tear it up.
I'm slipping, I'm falling, I can't get up. That's fire. These records set DMX to go on one of the most iconic runs any rapper has had in history. X's next 4 albums after that, Flesh of My Flesh, and then there was X, The Great Depression, and Grand Champ, all debuted at #1 on Billboard and sold an ungodly amount of records. They also made him the first rapper in history to have their first 5 projects debut at #1 on Billboard, which is an insane accolade. People loved X. He was refreshing, real, honest, and someone that people saw themselves in. And the love ran extremely deep. I think the best way to show the scale of how much love he had is by watching his 1999 Woodstock Festival show where he performed Rough Riders' anthem. Look at that crowd, bro. That's gotta be one of the craziest rushes ever being on that stage. I can't even imagine what that's like. And he wasn't just winning in music. His unique personality also opened up doors for him to get into acting. 1998 to 2004 was considered the golden age of his acting career. From then, he played roles in Belly, Romeo Must Die, Exit Wounds, Cradle to the Grave, and Never Die Alone, which people consider his best acting performance ever. Looking at all the successful music and films X was a part of, it seemed he was on a straight trajectory up. But despite how good everything looked from the outside, behind the scenes, things were starting to get extremely dark.
DMX, that's my dog, right? He the only person that ever got me to drink Hennessy at an award show. He was sitting like 2 seats down, and he had a Hennessy bottle. He was just, whoa, and he was like, "Big dog, You want some?
There's two big reasons why X's music grabbed people's attention. One was his voice, which is his tone, delivery, and aggression. And the other is the storytelling, the emotional honesty, and the depiction of the struggle. The voice brought people to the show, and the story made people stay. But it's really easy to overlook the fact that these were real stories and real pain that X was rapping about. And it wasn't just for show, he really lived that life. And on top of that, the pain doesn't just stop when you become successful. In fact, a lot of times it could exacerbate whatever problem somebody went through. And the problem that derailed X's life the most was his addiction. Like I mentioned before, he accidentally smoked crack for the first time when he was 14, and the drug had a grip on him for the rest of his life. This led to so many problems like his erratic behavior, legal issues, and health issues. Big health issues, especially with his teeth. In 2019, he revealed that as a result of the drug, he only had 20 teeth left, way less than the 32 that adults are supposed to have. But it wasn't just crack. X also had a crazy drinking habit that he hid in plain sight. He was pretty much always drinking. Anytime he was out, he had a bottle, and almost every story people have of him involves drinking in some way, shape, or form. The most infamous example is the story that Snoop Dogg told of how he got both of them wasted at a Grammy show. And even though the stories are wild and funny, it also shows how deep his addictions ran. And DMX was very aware of it. He fought tooth and nail to get sober his entire life. He'd go to rehab, get sober for a bit, come out, some shit would happen, and then he'd get right back on the drugs. This heavy drug use directly fueled the next problem that would derail X's life over the years, his endless legal issues that he faced. X's history with the law is beyond crazy. It's documented that he was arrested over 30 times in his life. His first arrest was for arson at 10 years old because he and a friend allegedly tried to burn down the group home that they were living in. Since then, it's been a barrage of traffic, gun, and violent arrests, with a few of them sounding like they came straight out of Hollywood. For time's sake, I'm not gonna list all 30 plus, but I will read off some notable ones. Remember when I said he used to steal dogs?
When I stole a dog, huge, pit bull, massive head. I don't even know the dog's name. I named him Bully, some shit like that. Like, yeah, I just stole him, so I obviously didn't know his name.
Yeah, that was pretty illegal, and he got booked for that when he was 15. And he had a ton of other juvenile offenses, including carjacking, various robberies, and escaping prison when he broke out of his juvenile detention center and ran away through the woods. After that, the real started happening. In 1999, right when DMX was blowing up, police raided his New Jersey home after a tip and found a horrifying scene inside. 13 malnourished dogs chained up inside of pens with feces everywhere and no food or water. X was booked on 13 animal cruelty offenses along with gun and drug charges from other things found in the home. This led to probation, fees, and him being forced to make public service announcements against animal abuse. In 2004, X was booked at JFK Airport in one of the funniest arrest stories I've ever heard in my life. Bro was upset because he was late for a flight and a car in front of him was driving too slow. So in a fit of rage, he decided to turn on police lights inside of his car, pull the other car over, and try to carjack them. This led to a slew of charges: impersonating FBI agents, drug possession because he had coke, menacing, attempted carjacking, and DUI. Somehow he only got probation for this, but he would violate a year later, sending him to Rikers for 70 days. In 2007, X wanted to escape the craziness of the New York music industry, so he moved to the Arizona desert. Unfortunately for him, more craziness found him out there. His North Phoenix home got raided after reports came in that dogs were being neglected again. Cops found 12 pit bulls in similar conditions as his New Jersey home. They were malnourished with no food or water around, and 3 dog carcasses were buried on the property. Also, just like New Jersey, they found more drugs and more guns. In May of 2008, feds went back to arrest X for the charges, but he barricaded himself inside his home, leading to a tense standoff with police. When they eventually got him out of the house, he was charged with everything and sentenced to 90 days in jail. By 2013, he left Arizona to move to South Carolina for a new start, but his old problems just kept following him. He was arrested 3 times in a year for driving without a license, 1 DUI, and 1 marijuana possession during a traffic stop. It's not clear how these cases ended, but it just adds to his crazy rap sheet. In 2015, he was booked in New York after failing to pay child support. By this point, he had 12 different kids and had $400,000 in unpaid fees. He was sentenced to 6 months in Buffalo jail for this, but got out after his lawyer convinced the courts to let him spend the rest of his time home. And we're not done yet. In 2017, X was arrested by the feds for tax fraud after being accused of hiding millions in earnings from the IRS. He initially pled not guilty, but changed to guilty some months later, and in 2018 was sentenced to a year in jail. And like I said, this just scratches the surface of his cases. He got booked a bunch more times for different robberies, traffic offenses, fighting in jail, and so many more crimes. With all the times he got arrested, he spent somewhere between 5 to 6 years in jail, or just over 10% of his life. But throughout all the chaos, he was still able to make moves. In 2006, he dropped Year of the Dog again and Undisputed in 2012. They didn't hit the same commercial success as his earlier records, not because of the quality of music, but mainly because his legal run-ins killed his momentum. But despite him trying to push through the mess, everything was about to catch up to him.
A heart attack during a drug overdose.
In 2019, DMX announced he was going on a 20-year reunion tour for his iconic first album, It's Dark and Hell is Hot. It was about to be a great walk down memory lane for fans and a way for X to enjoy the fruits of his labor. The tour started off strong, but towards the end, he put an abrupt stop to dates to check himself into rehab. However, he didn't actually relapse. He did this as a protective measure because he felt the stress around him was bringing him to the brink. He did close to 3 months in rehab, then came back out and picked up his tour where he left off. And everything seemed good after this. X was performing, doing tons of interviews, and enjoying the perks of the life he built for himself. However, everything came to a screeching halt in 2021. On April 2nd, cops were dispatched to his home in White Plains, New York after he was called in unresponsive. He suffered a massive heart attack in his house, allegedly caused by cocaine use. Paramedics were able to revive him and rush him to White Plains Hospital and put him on life support right away. The news of the episode broke pretty fast, leading to a massive crowd gathering outside the hospital to pray and show support for X. Hundreds of people rallied outside with signs, candles, and hearts full of hope. But sadly, the situation was too far gone. His heart had stopped for too long, causing him to be permanently brain dead. After a week in the ICU, the hospital staff told the family there was no chance of recovery. They then collectively made the decision to pull X off life support, and on April 9th, he died there in the hospital. The impact of his death was felt immediately and massively. Basically, everyone in hip-hop came out to pay their respects. Rough Riders, X's label that helped propel him to the limelight, led memorial rides throughout Westchester County, mainly in Yonkers. They also organized a huge public memorial for X, hosted at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Everyone in all of Westchester blasted his music for weeks straight. And me being in the county at the time, I vividly remember this. Every third car I walked past was blaring X's music at max volume. Other musicians that X worked with in the past also organized his music to put out one last posthumous album. The project, led by Swiss Beats, was named Exodus and dropped less than 2 months after he passed. Reviews on it were mixed to positive, which is pretty on par with how most posthumous albums are received. And speaking of Yonkers, they showed out like crazy. The city painted a bunch of murals in his honor, held a huge community vigil outside the projects he grew up in, and later renamed one of the city's streets Earl DMX Simmons Way. It was one of the biggest outpourings of love for a rapper that the industry has ever seen. It was on the same level as Pac, Big, Nipsey, and Mac Miller. It was a really wild and special thing to witness.
Some stand for what they believe in, and some won't. Some of us do wrong with no remorse. Some of us do wrong, see the light and change course.
Now, there's a couple more things worth mentioning that didn't fit in the video, so I wanted to make a quick list of fun facts about DMX's life. First, going back to his dad, he actually did achieve his dream of being an artist. He was never famous or world-renowned, but he did create a solid following of people in Philly who loved and bought his art. Despite both him and his son finding success in their arts, the two were never able to reconnect in a real way while X was alive. X also spoke about his dad in interviews, and at one point said that he he was glad that he didn't raise him. Even though he never patched things up with his dad, he was able to reconcile with his mom. X was in therapy, and his therapist surprised him by bringing his mom in the room, and the two were able to cry and hug it out. Next, going back to Reddy Ron, the dude who gave X credit for the first time, he never denied the allegations against him for X's whole life. It wasn't until days after he passed when he publicly came out and denied the whole situation. In my personal opinion, I think it's super shady that he waited until after X died to do this, so it makes me more inclined to believe X, but the reality is no one will ever really know for sure. And another fun fact, which is kind of more sad than fun, but when X passed, he was in a ton of debt. Even though he made millions of dollars in his career, he died in debt with no will, 15 kids, and 9 baby mothers. He owed the IRS $2.3 million, had over $1 million due in child support, and had various other debts from legal cases, judgments, and other situations. Now, it is not going to be the family's responsibility to pay off these debts. Usually in cases like these, the lenders will take whatever value there is from the deceased person's estate, not the surviving family members. It's estimated that X's music catalog is worth over $17 million, which is more than enough to cover his debts. However, because there is no will, a massive legal battle ensued between his kids and baby mothers that's lasted for years and is still going on today. Despite the tension, recently the family was able to come together and make a documentary about X's life called X vs. Earl, The Simmons Family Speaks. It outlines how X was before the fame, after fame, his death, and how he affected all of their lives. With all that said, that's the full heartbreaking story of DMX's life.
Live is to suffer, but to survive is to find meaning in that suffering.
That's a quote that people believe originated by philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, and that X found a century and a half later and lived his whole life by. And even though he's gone today, that man is immortal in this life, nothing short of immortal. Let me know what you think about him and the video in the comments, and if you want to learn about another rapper's crazy traumatic life, we did a full breakdown of the mystery of MF Doom. Check it out here.